Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Arcane Assist. We've got another continuation of our discussion of variations on Ghost Fleet and variations on answers to it. A fairly popular one that's come up in conversation a couple of times is Severius2. So I'm joined today by Evan playing Severius2.
We're back.
Yeah. Once again, I'm playing the variant that does not have the cannon in the list that gets max Blackbanes and loses out on one rifle. Still have the Wraith Engine in my list, and I'm playing Deneghra 3. So a bit of a change here. Deneghra 3 is a really excellent pressure caster. She's got a lot of threat projection. Obviously, in this series, you're seeing a lot of unfavorable matchups for Ghost Fleet. The takeaway here is that Ghost Fleet does have bad matchups. But I would prefer to see a little bit more volume of infantry, a few more souls. The game plan with this matchup is to really put a lot of pressure on Evan by leveraging my far threat ranges. My fairly tanky caster, pretty far up, and then try to pick off his support really effectively so that I can get into a situation where mortality can be a powerful late-game tool. To that end, I've deployed Deneghra way up on the top flank there, and I did lose the roll to go first, which doesn't happen all the time for Ghost Fleet, but it does happen often enough that it's worth showing you a game with it. So Evan is playing a list that actually gets first turn, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Before we started our deployment, Evan indicated that his upkeeps, because he's playing in the Creator's Might theme force, would be Arcane Ward on Severius2 and no other upkeep spells. Evan, you want to talk for a moment about your list?
Yeah, for sure. So the list is Sevi2 in Creator's Might with a battle group of Blessing of Vengeance, 3 Reckoners and a Redeemer, as well as a Hierophant in there. And then we have the Battle Engine, the Vassal of Judgment, 2 free Vassals of Menoth, 2 Racks, a Vassal Mechanik, and 2 minimum choir units. So Sevi brings some awesome tools to the table. He has Arcane Power. He can cast a spell without spending focus once per activation. So free whatever you want. He has a ton of good spells. He has Hex Blast. He has Rebuke. He has Ashes to Ashes. He has Awareness. All great spells. Ashes to Ashes particularly powerful in this. You can just get a ton of work done once you've RFP'd the leader models with your feat. Your feat being choose D3 plus 2 enemy non-warcaster, non-warlock, living or undead warrior models currently in Severius' control range. The chosen models suffer a boostable POW 12 magical damage roll if a model is boxed by Fires of Communion, so his feat. Center a 4-inch AoE cloud effect on the boxed model and remove it from play. The AoE is a hazard that remains in play for 1 round. Enemy models ending or entering their activations in the AoE suffer a POW 12 fire damage roll and the fire continuous effect. So all very relevant effects for this matchup. AoE staying in play on the ground is obviously a problem for many infantry models. Which it's also funny. A lot of people think the way to counter that is to spread out. It's actually to stay clumped together so that you begin your activation in it and can just walk out of the AoE and be fine.
And it also doesn't block your line of sight because there's a cloud effect and You're already in it, so you can walk out pretty easily. Yeah, it's actually the weird instance where against a caster who's really good at clearing infantry, you want to bunch up.
Yeah, but the big deal is it's just pick D3 plus 2, so the 3 leader models within your control area of 16 inches because you're focus 8. So it's a long range that the leader models have to stay back or they're going to get removed from play. And that's bad because you have Ashes to Ashes as well as the monstrous tool of the new Vassal of Judgment that has Admonisher and can reload once.
Yeah, so this matchup really comes down to a very, very cagey positioning game. I'm trying to keep my leaders far enough back that for Sevi to take them, he has to come too far forward, and then I can kill him. So it's a combination of pressuring with the really scary elements in my list, like Deneghra herself, and keeping my leaders in a cagey position while I can still threaten his army. So without further ado, let's get into that. All right, so as previously mentioned, Evan got first turn. So you can see our deployment here on the 2017 scenario is pretty wide. Evan committed a little bit more to the bottom zone here. I committed a little bit more to the top zone, so we're going to try to kind of play that dance a little bit.
Yep. And I have the Battle Engine going right up the middle. A, because it doesn't care about that water. B, because it wants to be wherever infantry are going to be, and currently there's a lot of those in the middle.
Infantry are everywhere.
Yep. And it has a lot of cool new tools. It has the ability to heal and remove upkeeps. It still has the awesome like when a model dies, move it thing. Well, that's not particularly relevant for my list.
Judgment or something like that.
Yes. While that's not particularly relevant for my list, still a really cool ability. So first turn, Sevi allocates 1 to each of his jacks because he doesn't need to cast anything this turn because he starts with Arcane Ward up. Camps 3. And everybody runs. Now, the reason I allocated 1 to everything is because he has Field Marshal Oracular Vision. So when they first take a hit, they can spend a focus to just not take any damage. And Tim's got a lot of guns on his side of the table, and as much as they're probably not going to deal a huge amount on turn 1, I want to just not take any chip damage right off the bat, and I have the extra focus to do it, so I'm going to.
Sorry, we should clarify there. We said the first time they take a hit. That's an option. However, Oracular Vision is simply once per turn. So if you remember Vision from Mark II, you'd kind of just throw like a nothing attack at something, and then you'd clear Vision, and then you throw your meaningful attack. Oracular Vision, you get to choose when that happens. So you can just say like, oh, that POW 10? No worries, I'll take it. That POW 15 that you're going to boost damage on, will Oracular Vision that one.
Yeah. So it's a really powerful effect. We have lots of jacks just running up. Choir is also running because I'm not particularly worried about anything Tim can throw at me this turn because, again, I can just get rid of whatever guns, and Denny is far enough away that I don't think she's going to be able to cast spells at me.
Yeah, I mean, I can run an Arc Node pretty far up, and I could put it on Mortality, but I just, like, it's not an upkeep spell. I can't keep it up. If it was an upkeep spell, you could remove it with the Vessel. So, like, there's not a lot that shielding would offer you right now. And even Passage wouldn't give you that very much. In fact, I think if I chose to just walk and shoot with one of my Revenant units, you'd be much happier because they'd be further up. They wouldn't be as far up the table.
Correct. So that's my turn 1. It's just running. It's getting into position for later on.
All right. I run a Ripjaw up into this trench. The Battlegroup, if I didn't mention already, is a Stalker, Ripjaw, Deathripper. I feel like Deneghra 3 wants a couple more Arc Nodes so she can just project threat in a few more places. So... got my Stalker powered up in the AD line there. So his Reckoners can charge 10 inches. And I feel like with Gravewind and a pretty substantial camp, Deneghra is afraid of the melee threat, but isn't likely to get killed by the guns. A couple of boosted POW 14s aren't going to take me out. So she walks 9, casts Gravewind on herself, and repos into just outside of that 10-inch threat. She has a rough terrain there, so she's a little bit harder to hit. Pardon me, the lane is a little bit harder to navigate, should I say. So I'm not worried about that slightly closer Reckoner getting to me either. Stalker moves up behind the forest, and it's time to unpack a bunch of dudes. So we run some Revenant models. I kind of split my rifles a little bit on the assumption that Evan probably can't come up aggressively enough to get all 3 leader models because I'm going to play them fairly conservatively. I want to mitigate the number of rifles he's going to get while still giving him a fairly tempting feat to get out of the way so I can play my list a little bit more aggressively. So here you see my Blackbanes clumping up in among the Revenant models. They can apparate, so they've got a little bit of spacing options available to them. If you operate into one of the Fires of Communion Clouds, you still take a POW, but ideally when they do that, they'll be incorporeal. So that will help. But if for some reason they weren't incorporeal, like they'd been attacked the previous turn, when they operated into it, they'd enter the space and take the damage, because you don't become incorporeal again until you activate, which is a change for Mark III. The Wraith Engine, I'm probably going to put it in this bottom zone to threaten that Reckoner that's in this zone and to really just be capable of contesting it for a really long period of time. I debated making sure that the Wraith Engine spent the game kind of protecting Deneghra, but I'm fairly confident that her stat line of 15, 16 plus Gravewind for 17, 16 and the full camp that she can be on most of the game is usually enough to keep her alive. And we run up the Revenant models in this unit, ready to score this zone a little later on.
So Tim ends his turn, and I look at the table, and I see 3 pretty scary boostable guns right across the table from Deneghra, as well as the fact that she's a huge base, so Blessing of Vengeance can run within 10, and I can arc a Hex Blast through Blessing of Vengeance and drop Gravewind from Deneghra. And not only will the bond from Blessing give me +2 to hit It'll give me the +2 to the damage roll as well, so it's a POW 15 Hex Blast roll. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So the initial question I'm having is, where do I allocate what? So I'm going to give one to that Reckoner on the top. The other one's just going to get one from the Vassal, I feel. In the bottom, I'm debating, do I give any to the Redeemer? He's only Rat 2, even if I aim, he's Rat 2, that is. And then if I hit a Flare from a Reckoner, he goes to 4, but then you're still def 15, so I need 11s to hit.
Yeah, 11s are not super likely. He's probably not a big contributor to this plan.
Yeah.
Deneghra being a battle engine can't be knocked down. She can't be made stationary, but the Flare is a pretty effective debuff, and I definitely not factored that into my math.
Mm-hmm. So the plan is basically just upkeep Arcane Ward, pull one off the rack, put up Harmonious Exaltation, and then I get a free Hex Blast from Arcane Power, as well as the boosts from it, or the boosts from Sevi, just being Focus 8 and having the ability to do that. So he's going to boost the Hex Blast, both the hit and damage. He's going to cast another one for 2 instead of 3 because of Harmonious, and then it'll boost the attack and damage rolls of that as well. And then after he's gone with those 2 huge Hex Blasts, he's going to, or the Vassal and the Choirs are going to go. They're going to battle the top Reckoners, and they're going to be able to aim and shoot, and then I can even do the Battle Engine, and just we'll see where it goes. So we're starting with Blessing of Vengeance. He runs basically to the edge of that forest, and within 10 inches of Denny, he can even back up a bit, as Tim points out here. And yeah, we're just going to go for it, really.
Yeah, so I think I'd given an adequate credibility to the fact that Severius is basically a Ravagore. I mean, he's got a boosted POW 15 at a really incredible range that he has access to anytime. And I'm thinking to myself that, well, Deneghra's defense 17, so if he even lands that Hex Blast, he has to directly hit. But with the Blessings Bond,
by the way,
he gets +2 to hit. And there's a pretty nice 16 that Evan rolled there. So I reduce damage by 5, and I take 10 damage.
Yeah, it's a good start. Boost to hit the second one.
Hits
Nail
as well.
it.
POW 13, so dice -3 this time.
Does 9 or 10 even.
Spikes really well. I reduce it, and it does 5 more damage. So that's not great. 2 really good spikes, but as Evan points out, he's got lots of attacks this turn, and those are only the 2 kind of big portion of it, the starter. We aim with a Reckoner. Boost to hits, lands that Flare. Boost damage. Another pretty good spike there.
Yep, you reduce it by 5. It still does 6, which kills Denny.
Sure does. So that's my bad. Underestimated the amount of pure damage potential that Severius has. That man is a truck spewing fire, and he can just throw loads of damage out.
Yeah, for someone that looks like he's just kind of going to do some supporting throughout most of the game, he has a very credible assassination threat, especially with his good old buddy Blessing of Vengeance. That just gives him that +2/+2, which really makes him just truck people.
Yeah, boosted POW 15s, like at magic ability 10. I mean, hits whatever he wants to, damages whatever he wants to, doesn't need to worry about line of sight very much. Like, yeah, it's pretty incredible. And the thing that's great about that line of play that Evan's in there is when he spiked the 2 damage rolls, I think you can say with great confidence that you were going to assassinate me. However, if we imagine that you didn't roll great on the first roll, and you did your Hex Blast ×2, and you're like, this isn't really going to happen, you haven't moved yet.
Correct.
You've got Arcane Ward on yourself, so you can't be targeted by my spells, and your defense 16. You still have 1 focus left over to Oracular Vision yourself if you take 1 big hit from something. You can just walk behind that building and hide, or walk back and just be as safe as you can.
And I didn't even feat.
Didn't even feat yet. Just play, like, you could play the rest of that turn super conservatively. Just be like, well, I stripped your spell and I did a bunch of damage to you, and it didn't really work out very well, so we'll just play the rest of the turn really conservatively.
Yeah. So that's Severius2 and Denny3. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe and follow us on all the social media. You can find it in the description below. If you have any comments, let us know. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next Monday.